Let me tell you about spray painting pet portraits.
I'm at Great Plains SPCA in Merriam, Kansas, and I'm covering up a mural that I painted last year for a pet photo contest put on by this animal shelter as a fundraiser for their cause. And they help a lot of families and animals all around the KC metro area, and they're honestly one of the best animal shelters in the nation as far as their outreach and the resources they provide. Anyway, I painted for them last year. That was what that old mural is, and I am back again this year to paint this year's winner. There's a number of different categories: sweetest senior, best of show, best smile, best buddies, cutest kitty, and most adorable dog. And so I designed in Procreate, you just saw me, all that moving on that digital screen with the photos, taking those individual portraits and compiling them into a collage for the new mural. We're going to rely heavily upon that photo reference throughout. As you can see, I am literally tracing out every inch of the sponsor logos at the bottom here. It's really important to get good high res images of these files of the logos, because for a business that is sponsoring a mural, they're going to want their logo to be nice and crisp, nice and sharp and legible. And honestly, it's the part that probably takes the most focus and time and energy when painting this mural. Ironically enough, the portraits are actually a little bit easier than painting all those straight lines in the lettering of those logos in particular. So I kind of did a lot of that grunt work, just like lining out all those shapes on the projection. And now I'm doing the portrait section. You can kind of see now in the daytime all those lines that I marked. So I'm not drawing out every little detail. I'm just doing outlines of where all the more main shapes are, and I'm kind of breaking up the portraits as such when I'm tracing them out, just looking at the photo. And I got the background in there, so now we're going to start on our first portrait. Some things I want to talk about are the value structure and color are the two formal elements that I'm going to be considering most when doing a portrait painting. So I'm going in with a mid-tone, and I'm basically working with either 2 or 3 tones of a color, and these will also be making up the value structure of the painting, which is the relationship between lightness and darkness within an image or a painting. And that's basically the darks and the lights. And so you see I've got kind of 2 or 3 tones there. I got that dark red, brown. I've got 2 different tans, kind of a medium tan and a slightly warmer, brighter tan. And then same thing for that nose. I got a darker pink and a lighter pink. And then I also will have white and black. And in this case, I've got kind of the gray background, the gray blue background. It's kind of seeping through, being my second to lowest dark tone. And then you saw I just came in with the white highlights, using that sparingly, but those are really what give the 3D look and the pop and realistic texture, is those white highlights that are just kind of capturing the sunlight or whatever the light source is. This one was interesting because I had a tennis ball. It was a weird pose. It's hard enough to draw a portrait, but then to do an action pose like this where their mouths are kind of like snarled and contorted was pretty challenging, to be honest. And I usually wouldn't do something like this for a formal portrait, but it was just a pretty playful gesture, and I liked the way it fit into the composition. The angles of the dogs' heads and their ears fell really nicely, and it was kind of a cool image. I will say that there was so much shadow on the dogs' faces. It really wasn't a well lit photograph, and so that made it even more challenging. I kind of had to invent some new value structure. I had to like take the shadow out of the portrait. I should show you a a photo. Maybe I will put something up on the screen. I already did that. On to this next one is a good example of how I just use a couple different tones. There's basically a black and white pattern on this dog, and that actually is pretty challenging. Black hair is really challenging because when you put the highlights in, it has a tendency to make it look like it's gray instead of black. So you have to be really sparing with the highlights. Hopefully my explanation is sufficient enough. If not, just seeing me do it will help you understand what I'm talking about. Basically using the background gray as one of the midtones, adding a darker light gray and then a lighter light gray for the whites, and then even blasting it with actual white as well. I think that's what that highest tone is there, that brightest value on there. And then I certainly do come back with actual white. So yeah, it must have been a gray because you can see the white appearing over it. But see how that really just makes it pop? The life spark in the eyes are really important for the expression and making it seem lifelike. Doing the highlights on that nose really makes it look wet. Same with the saliva, the tongue that you see in there. You can make it look wet if you put more of those highlights in there. And so on to the last portrait, probably the hardest of all of them because it's a cat and it's straight on. And cat facial anatomy is really difficult, especially when it's got to be somewhat symmetrical like this one. You can really see when you mess up proportions and angles, and you got to get it right essentially twice. But I think I did okay with this one, just focusing on building up those shapes layer by layer, putting in that mid-tone at first, coming in with a second higher mid-tone, and then going in and establishing some of the darker tones, the kind of a darker reddish brown there, really using that gray in the background to be a structure of the value. I didn't go through, I guess, all of that one. So here's the final shots. Sorry about that. Hopefully this was somewhat informational for you and helps you get your portraits better looking, doing it in spray paint. I didn't really talk much about specifically spray paint. Just remember, it's all about the touch. Do it layer by layer, finesse that touch and that can control, baby. That's what it's all about. What do you think? Thanks for watching. See ya.